Episode 22, The Murphys and Music. How did a Boston three-decker poor kid become an opera buff? We Murphys are singers, but none of us were musicians other than the amateurish playing of the ukulele by Gary and my harmonica pursuits. Dad knew many traditional Irish songs and led the a cappella singing at family parties. So our musical knowledge came from Dad's Irish songs or from mothers who often hummed and sang small C operetta or vaudeville songs from the early 1900s. Like other Americans, we were, of course, influenced by pop music from the radio and later TV. Blessed Sacrament School provided some classical music education by teaching sharps and flats, plus Gregorian chant and pre-Vatican II traditional Catholic hymns. In the lower grades, I was part of a boys' choir trained by the Notre Dame de Namur nuns, a Belgian order peopled by Irish nuns. I think I was a bluebird. As I got ready to poob, the popular urban music of that era had recently changed to what is now called doo-wop. It was then called rhythm and blues or R&B. It was mostly teenage singing groups from Brooklyn, the Bronx, Philadelphia, and Jersey. Recently, public television has rediscovered that kind of stuff and uses the televised doo-wop revival shows to raise money for their other more nefarious pursuits. R&B was played on some Boston radio stations. On WBMS, Symphony Sid was so popular that he had a song, Jumpin' with Symphony Sid, written for him by jazz saxophonist Lester Young, with lyrics by jazz singer King Pleasure. Others playing that music were Woo Woo Ginsburg on WMEX, Bill Marlowe on WBZ, and Sabby Lewis on WBMS. I was still in grade school at Blessed Sacrament when friends introduced me to R&B. It consisted of a very simple and repeated melodies sung in harmony by groups of late adolescent males. There was often a soprano-like falsetto male lead singer. The subjects of the song were simple also: first love, losing the girl, etc. I was just discovering girls myself, and my hormones were introducing themselves to me. I liked R&B, but never had a phonograph or bought any of the 45 RPM records. Too expensive. It was also danceable, using a evolved Lindy Hop type dance called jitterbug. It was popular only for a few years, maybe 6 or 7, and was almost finished by the year of my graduation from high school, 1956. It was soon eclipsed by further evolved R&B, rock and roll. My musical development also included my older siblings, Maureen and Gary, and their favorite music. Dancing to Latin rhythms was very popular just before my puberty, and I was taught by my older sister Maureen how to rumba and samba and mambo, but also how to foxtrot and jitterbug. Maureen was a Frank Sinatra bobby soxer. She also loved Sarah Vaughan and developed a singing style reflecting Sarah Vaughan. Jazz was big in Manhattan, Chicago, New Orleans, and Kansas City, but Boston had some too. I was probably 15 when Storyville's Jazz Workshop on Huntington Avenue used to have Sunday afternoon jazz sessions. I don't think there was a cover charge because I didn't have any money, but I saw Billie Holiday, also Errol Garner. I remember at those jazz matinees being the only barely tolerated white kid among the almost totally black adult audience. I must have been only 8 or 9 when our upstairs neighbors, the Mickles, got free tickets to the traveling Don McNeil Breakfast Club radio show. I think the one-time event was held at the Hotel Statler Ballroom. Don McNeil was a very popular with his morning radio show aimed at the housewives. We sat in a very brightly lit audience area while the on-stage guests were interviewed and the show's band played along with whatever the pop singer as a guest. It was real showbiz, but I was not impressed. I still remember it. In other stories, I have extolled my big brother Gary for his interest in my welfare in many ways. In a music education vein, he once purposefully took me to see the Kern Hamstein musical movie Showboat at the Central Square Theater. I was probably 11 years old and thoroughly enjoyed it. How did I develop my love for opera? No one in my family showed any interest in classical music or opera but me. The Bennington, New Hampshire summer cottage that we rented had an old woman wooden wind up floor model Victrola and a stack of dusty 48 RPM shellac records. Bill Coleman, our landlord, must have been an opera aficionado because there was a number of Italian opera recordings in that stack. I remember one in particular, Vesti la Giuba from Leoncavallo's Pagliacci, sung by the great tenor Enrico Caruso. I found out later that that recording was the first gramophone recording that sold 1 million copies. I played that aria many, many times. I was amazed at how emotional it made me feel. I loved it without understanding the language or opera itself. Caruso made me an opera lover. Now I listen to opera on my home music system, and often I listen to Pavarotti or the Three Tenors or Maria Callas. She's the best. And I often travel great distances to see professional opera when I can. In the past, I have been to the Boston Opera Company and to the Worcester Opera. My wife Jean and I belong to the Sally Amato Guild, which supports the Amato Opera Company, formerly located in Manhattan's Bowery. We would go to New York whenever we could to see an opera, and all because in 1953, a 13-year-old boy found some old Caruso recordings on shellac and played them on a wind-up Victrola. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episode. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and perhaps refer friends who might be interested in this podcast series. Again, my thanks.